I knew Georgie and Mandy would have more problems this season, but this one wasn't on my bingo card. Or it wouldn't have been if I hadn't seen the commercial. Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage Season 2 Episode 2 revolved around Mandy's growing fame now that she's the weather girl. Georgie didn't like other men looking at her, and a dinner out turned into a big argument. Please don't tell me that this, of all things, is the beginning of the end. Georgie's jealousy had a deeper meaning, but it was still annoying. Georgie didn't like the attention Mandy was getting. He lost it when some guy bought her a drink and she waved back at him. Of course, it doesn't take a clinical psychologist to realize that it wasn't about the one guy or the drink, or even that lots of guys might flirt with Mandy in the future. Georgie and Mandy's relationship began because of her pregnancy, so Georgie likely wonders if she'd really be into him if they didn't have a child together. Plus, right now Georgie is struggling to get the tire shop off the ground, while Mandy's career is taking off to the point where strangers are noticing her. Those two things together provide a reasonable explanation for Georgie's jealousy. That doesn't make it any less annoying of a plot. It just makes it understandable. This story was meant to be funny, but it just made everyone look bad. I think someone in the writer's room thought the idea of people flirting with Mandy while Georgie seethed was funny, but I wasn't amused. For one thing, it was mostly out of character for Mandy to enjoy it. Mandy is generally vocal about her pro-feminist views, and I felt like she would want to be seen as more than a sex object. Of course, there's nothing wrong with a woman enjoying being flirted with, but the way Mandy's character has been written, it seemed like she would normally be the one offended, not Georgie. Her fame getting her out of the speeding ticket was one thing. Nobody minds not getting one of those. But she seemed embarrassed when her mother brought the photo to the dry cleaners and went on and on about Mandy being the weather girl, so why would she spend hours getting made up in order to take advantage of her newfound celebrity? Georgie's jealousy, picking a fight with Mandy, and later getting into a fight with some guy who was flirting with a completely different woman were also annoying, but at least those were somewhat in character. Ruben was the worst part of this stupid story. I know Ruben never misses an opportunity to needle Georgie, but come on. Georgie's jealousy, picking a fight with Mandy and later getting into a fight with some guy who was flirting with a completely different woman, were also annoying, but at least those were somewhat in character. Ruben was the worst part of this stupid story. I know Ruben never misses an opportunity to needle Georgie, but come on. And Ruben did take Georgie to that bar and tried, but failed, to refrain from saying "I told you so" after he couldn't stop Georgie from getting into an unnecessary fight with the guy who was flirting with the bartender. Maybe there's hope for these two after all, now that Jim isn't pitting them against each other at the tire shop. The main story might have been annoying, but I loved Connor's storyline. I'm always thrilled when Connor gets a story that involves the way his likely undiagnosed autism makes things harder for him. I felt for him. He was so excited to play at the ball game, only for it to turn into a disaster, because he didn't know which song to play when. I think that whoever arranged music for the game would explain to the musician what they wanted him to do, though. On the other hand, if their Texas town is a huge sports town, the person in charge of music might have assumed Connor knew everything about how the games usually go, because most people do. Connor is not only the least sporty person ever, but had a need to know why the rules of the game were what they were. I never thought about it. 3 strikes and you're out has always felt right to me. But Connor had a point that the rule was arbitrary. I also laughed when he said he didn't have a uniform, even though Jim pointed out that the musician is part of the team. Connor really only needed to know the rules of when to play his music. Hopefully he gets that sorted out so he can get back to being proud of himself. Would you like me to comment on the plot points discussed or summarize the episode's major storylines?